normal human persons, and welcome to the Book of Very, Very Bad Things podcast. I'm your host, Peter. This week on the show, we have the one and only Chris Broach. You may know Chris from Braid. You may know him from The Sparrow, Sunset, Firebird Band, The Firebird Project, The Firebird Suite, The Patrick Dance, and a host of other phenomenal recording projects. The Chris Broach you all know and remember is still the Chris Broach of today, with a whole lot of life experience in between. You have to understand, this isn't a man in his teens and early 20s spazzing out on stage. This is a man who's seen every side of what it is to be a recording artist, to be a husband, to be a parent, and to be a mortal being, carving out a life on this miserable and sometimes uninhabitable planet of ours. Chris has a perspective that a lot of us do not. A perspective that I think you all need to take in, understand, and appreciate. I think you'll find what he has to say insightful, humbling, unique, and utterly beautiful. So without further ado, I give to you Chris Broach on the Book of Very, Very Bad Things podcast.
All right, Chris, do I have your permission to use your likeness, voice, and otherwise for the uses of this podcast?
Yes. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. I've been really looking forward to this because just to start it all off, not to fanboy out on you or anything like that, but I've legitimately been listening to your music since 1995. So, since I was a 19-year-old man, and you and I were only born 3 weeks apart.
Really?
Fun little fact. Yeah, you were born on September 5th. I was born on the 27th of 1976.
Wow. Okay, so same year too.
Yes.
That's crazy. That's good.
So legitimately, since we were both 19 years old, I've been enjoying your music.
Well, thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Now, I don't know how familiar you are with what it is that I do with this format in this show, but normally my first question to every artist is exactly the same. I think your answer is going to be vastly dissimilar than most because you have a deeper understanding of what it is to be immortal. But I always ask everyone, what is it that existentially you're most terrified of? Now, normally when I ask this question, it's not of a human being that is A, as old as you and I are, as long in the tooth as we are, and B, people who have not kind of faced down the same sort of, mortal certainties that you have. So I think your answer would be a lot more pertinent than most.
Well, so what's my biggest existential fear, huh? It's one of those things that I have revisited a lot lately, and in fact, as recently as yesterday, I think about this stuff a lot because of the last few years, what I went through. Like I everybody went through COVID, but right at the start of COVID, I got diagnosed with cancer. So that was not a lot of fun. And let me just be honest with that. And it's still not. I'm on the other side of it, really, luckily, and I'll knock on wood, I'll take any luck or anything anybody wants to throw my way.
Right.
The truth is that, I literally went to see my oncologist yesterday. What's today? Friday? Yesterday? Yeah. So, and here I am wanting an answer like that, like him to tell me like, yeah, man, you're cured, you're good to go, like you're done. because here's the thing, I went through treatment. I went through, I mean, it's pretty, I went through a lot. I mean,
Yeah.
they had to remove, I had to have major surgery. I mean, they went in and took out a part of my, my colon, really. Uh, I had colorectal cancer. And so that's, I mean, you know, it's, they found it by accident. Luckily, they found it luckily by accident, because it was already at a stage, whatever, 3C, which is right before it spreads.
Yeah.
And so they took everything out. They took, yeah, 30, 30 something lymph nodes out. And anyway, once they took everything out, it was in the lymph nodes, but as well from where they found it. But man, you know what? Like I could go into more gory details and stuff, but the truth of the matter is that what it meant was that they had to give me really aggressive chemo after the surgery as well
Yeah.
to make sure that it wasn't going to spread. And so far, so good. I mean, look, I finished chemo about a year and a half ago, and I mean, it almost killed me. I mean, what the treatment that they gave me almost killed me. I mean, for some reason, in less than 1% of people, there's a specific side effect where it messes with your vascular system, gives you like vasospasms, like around the heart.
Yeah.
So it looks like you're having a heart attack. It can cause a heart attack. And in fact, in my case, they still don't know if it did or it didn't. But the first day I went home with the chemo, I was throwing up, and I thought, okay, this is normal. I've seen this. I've seen TV, right? I guess
Sure.
people throw up, But I was throwing up every 45 minutes and couldn't stop. And later on, they found out that I was throwing up every 45 minutes because I was having the vagus nerve was getting, like the nerve that's, or I think it's the vagus nerve that the one's like kept getting hit because my heart was going crazy because the chemo was affecting me, and they put me on a drip. I took it home and it was a drip. That's why, and it was just continuous chemo. And so I kept throwing up, and finally we called again, like at 2 a.m. And we had already called 12 hours before, and I had been throwing up straight I couldn't hold anything down. And ambulance came, and something happened in the ambulance. I don't really know, but I felt like I got hit in the chest with a baseball bat. I sat up and felt myself leaving through my fingertips. I mean, I'm not kidding. I'm not making, like it was.
Right.
And then I don't remember what happened. I remember lying there and them having, like, they were getting out the paddles, and I'm like, no, like I sat up and said no, like this
Yeah.
is what I said. I'm like, no, right? And I saw them doing this, warming up the paddles, right? And I'm like, and I couldn't respond anymore because I had just fallen back down because I almost lost consciousness, and I didn't. But man, and then I don't remember what happened. And then I found out, then the next day I was transferred to a larger hospital so they could take care of me. And I had some kind of ischemic attack. And then they did all these tests, right? They threw all this stuff at me. They put stuff through my arm, like to look at my heart. They put a camera in. They put a camera up my leg and through my arm, and like, I mean, no artery damage, no no blockages. Like at the time I was 43. I'm 45 now. I've always been pretty healthy. Like pretty in good enough shape, and always taken good care of my heart. And I was vegetarian for a long time too, so I don't eat a lot of real meat. I mean, I eat a little bit of meat these days, but not much. Mainly fish. But anyway, I think that probably helped me though, being vegan and vegetarian for so long.
Oh, for certain. For
Yeah.
certain, yeah.
So long story short, all this stuff happened, and I was living with. So then I had I couldn't walk from my bed to the bathroom in my house, just 20 feet, without almost passing out for 6 months. And it was because not only was I getting a really aggressive chemo treatment, but my heart wasn't keeping up because of the attack that had happened. And so I was just lying in my room in my bed, um, every day, all day for months. And I that's right when the pandemic hit. So the worst thing about all this was that I went to all the treatments, all the hospitals, all the stuff by myself. My wife couldn't even come. And I've got 3 kids. Like my kids are young. My kids are still young. At the time, they were 5, 3, and 1,
Mm-hmm.
and or almost maybe 6, 4, and 2, almost. But because they're going to be 8, 6, and 4. They all have April birthdays. For it just worked out that way. Yeah, 3 years apart. So, um, but in any case, yeah, man, no one could come see me, and I would like FaceTime my wife and the kids at night from the hospital. It was just, dude. I mean, you can't imagine. I mean, maybe you can, but I mean, I can't speak for anybody else. I couldn't have imagined um, going through that ever. Going through any of that, and I went through all these stages of everything, right? Like all the why me, and then what it turned into is why not me? Like if I'd rather it be me than someone who couldn't handle it, or or than like my wife or my kids, or like, and not
Yeah.
from a martyr not like not
No, no, but
yeah,
once you're a
just
parent and a husband,
yeah,
that is the way you look at life
yeah,
if your heart's in it.
yeah. And so and it it really changes you, so so I mean, and so I saw my oncologist, so I went through all this stuff. My heart's finally better. I saw my cardiologist a little bit back, and she said, you're healthy, you're good, you can start lifting weights and doing exercise. I like to exercise, right? And so she's like, you can start doing that again, and you're fine. I got off some of the heart medication that I was on, and anyway, we had to do a whole lot of stuff. I had to take all this heart medicine just so they could give me the chemo medicine, so that my heart wouldn't freak out. So we had to have this protective layer of medicine over the chemo, which was so weird.
Wow.
um,
So you're like dumping beta blockers and everything else on top of the chemo, pretty
Yeah,
much.
yeah. I mean, and I had those, those weird like nitroglycerin tabs that people have, like that have
Yeah.
heart issues, and I had those, and luckily I didn't need them except for a couple of times. But I'm better. I'm fine. I mean, like the doc said, my cardiologist said, like, you're the healthiest patient I have, so I'm not concerned. And I said, oh, okay, great. This was the other day, but I see my oncologist today, and it's the chances of recurrence with the kind of cancer I have are 60%. Like it's not like it's like 1 in 5. It's like it's like 2 out of 3,
Yeah.
or whatever, right? Or whatever, 6 in 10. So almost 60% basically. And so the truth is that that used to affect me, but man, they treated the hell out of it. And I've had one scan, I've had like all the kinds of exams they need to give to people that have these problems, and everything looks great.
Mhm.
Everything's healed, it looks good. They don't see anything, and I'm going to have another scan in June, so I'm just going to continue to knock on wood and hope that it stays that way. And the crazy thing is, like, I mean, this isn't even the craziest part about this is that I had just finished, not even kidding you, when I was diagnosed with this, I just finished treatment for like I used to drink a lot, so I had an alcohol problem, and happens to a lot of people,
Oh yeah.
especially people in the touring life that I knew, and people who don't do that, but I had to go through treatment, and I had just finished it. And so and it had worked mostly, but I wasn't done. And I got diagnosed with cancer, and I never had another drink again. I was done. I'm like, okay. I didn't want one, and I still don't, it's just a weird, so that's kind of a weird little, maybe it saved my life in a way,
Oh, I would say so. I mean, I had a heart attack when I was 22 because I was abusing heroin.
Oh, geez. Yeah.
So, like,
Yeah.
sometimes your body tells you, pump the
Yeah.
brakes,
It's time to cut it out. Yeah.
pump the brakes.
Yeah. Yeah.
And, I can't say there haven't been relapses along that route, but as you well know, having been in programs, it all starts with today anyway. So,
Yeah.
I mean, it's not self-forgiveness, but to successfully work any sort of program, you have to not forgive yourself, but just start again. Like, okay, I'm restarting right now.
Well, I mean, if you don't, like, what are you gonna do? You're just gonna pine away
Yeah,
and imagine all that could have been, and also not just not that could have been, but all the things that you could have done differently, or things that you regret, or whatever it is, and you can still regret those things, but just, the truth is you just have to move forward. And I have to be, truthfully, I actually think being, because wasn't the first time I went through treatment, right?
right.
Either the last time I did. And I think having been in that kind of a program before, actually gave me some better tools to deal with this health problem, because I think it really helped me with acceptance. The acceptance of, I mean, look, I was 43, and I was like, okay, I had just put out, or I was about to put out, I hadn't even put out yet, the second Sunset record.
Hmm.
We had just finished a touring cycle from the first record in 2018. I'd done some shows in 2019, and then stopped to do some of that stuff, and to go through some treatment. And I was in it for, a good 6-7 months. And so so and then like the pandemic hit, I got diagnosed, all this stuff happened. And I was working a contract job at the time. I do tech work, and so my day job, I work for a company, and I do like technical product management is what they call it. But yeah, who cares, right? I mean,
Well,
I like it. It's
it's
fun.
interesting to me, but
Yeah.
I'm a plumber by
Yeah.
trade.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah. I mean, it's fun. I work in tech with some really cool people and really intelligent people, and we do some cool things. I like the kinds of problems that I get to solve at work. But I was doing something similar, and I was on a contract position though, so I wasn't full time. So I
mm,
got sick, and like immediately, like, I tried to keep with it, keep with the job, but I couldn't, because I was going through treatment, and just I couldn't walk from the bed to the bathroom. I could, can imagine what else happened. On top of all that, the crazy thing is the chemo. So this is what my oncologist said. So I keep getting back to this story, right? So a lot of side roads here, obviously, right?
quite all right.
Um, so my oncologist says to me, he says, okay, I said, look, so I make a joke. I'm like, so am I cured or what? Because I honestly just want him to tell me, yeah, you're good to go, buddy. You're gonna
Yeah.
be fine. Like,
Yeah.
come on, son, you can do it. Um, will you be my dad? No. I'm kidding. I have a great dad, but the truth is that that's what I want. That's what I want him to do. And he doesn't, because he's a good doctor, right? He knows what he's talking about. And he says, um, God willing, knock on wood, the kinds of things that you say, right? Because he's like, I don't have a crystal ball. He's like, if I did, I wouldn't have to work here, right? Um, but I mean, in so many words, he didn't, not that exact stuff, but
Right.
he's great, and he's like, I said, like, what do you think? What do you give my chances at? Like, what do you think? And he's like, well, given that you're young and whatever, and you're young when this happened, and he's like, I'd say, with the amount of spread that you had, we're at a 50-50 now, that it'll come back. And like, that's better than 60-40, and so that's the only That's like the takeaway, right? It's better than 60/40. And honestly, man, I'll tell you what, I actually, so I was talking to someone about this today, or maybe I posted it on my Facebook wall. That's what I did. Yeah. So,
It's the
so
same thing at this point anyway.
sometimes I just, yeah, man, so much stuff. I mean, with kids and work and music and everything else, it all blends together. Um, so what were we talking about? Yeah,
Well, we were talking at that point, your doctor had given you 50/50. So,
yeah,
you'd
yeah,
been discussing with someone that fact, and that's where we digressed.
yeah. And so here's the thing. So I said, okay, good. What are we gonna do? My belief is that I just have to believe that I'm gonna be fine. You know,
Yeah.
and but it also means there are things that I need to change about myself to make sure that I get the most out of whatever time I have here, whether it's, you know, 2 years or 200, right? I mean, whatever it is, right? It's not going to be 200, let's be honest, but maybe 20, maybe 40, if I'm real lucky, 50. But
Mhm.
but here's the thing. I don't know what to, like, I don't know how to talk about that. Like, and I also don't know how to feel about that. And I don't know how to, like, it's hard to process. And are there like groups that deal with this kind of stuff where you can go and talk to people? Probably.
Yeah,
But
there are.
yeah, yeah.
There are.
But the truth is that I'm just, I just deal with it in my own way these days. I'm just thinking. I think a lot, and sometimes I need to get out of my head, which is true. But yeah, so what's my biggest existential fear? I think I've been trying to put. I mean, even since before this, like, it was always just, you know. So I'm going to digress a little bit. So that my whole life, even from the time I was little, I would think about space, right?
Oh, you're
And
gonna
the
blow my
stars.
fucking mind right now, but go for it.
I would think about space and the stars and the distance, right? Between the stars, and how really far away everything is,
Oh,
right?
you're gonna blow
And
my
not
fucking
just
mind.
not just how far away, but like how, like, incredibly, like. And also, at the time when I was growing up, I don't think we knew how big the universe was at the time, right?
No.
And so I used to stay up at night and think, like, how can it not end? What
You
does that
are
mean?
you are my fucking, like, you're my soulmate.
Yeah.
This is my existential fear. Keep going, I'm sorry, I don't wanna fuck you up, keep going.
Well, yeah, but what does that mean? And then what does that mean for us? And then what does that mean for, and the more we find out, right? When we start now, and so now we know that it's what, 13.6 billion years old, because that's as far as they can see, right?
Yeah,
And so, like, the closest star is what, light years away, Alpha Centauri or whatever it is, right?
yeah.
If you remember from the last Starfighter.
Yes, which
Yeah. Isn't that what it's from
yes.
that movie? But in any case, you know, but what that means is, right? And then so I have this problem where I start looking, like, I start asking questions and start looking on the internet now that it's at my fingertips, which it didn't used to be. And it doesn't make it better. It makes it worse, because I know how far things are. And now I know the direction and the way that our solar system travels, and the fact that it's just, we're traveling at whatever it is, 18 um, uh, something per second, like, I can't even remember what it is. I just read it last night, um, because of that fridge shaped comet that hit near Iceland or whatever. Anyway,
Mhm.
but so when I get back into this, what it becomes is, why does anything I do here matter? What I do here on Earth, in the big scheme of everything, what does it matter? I mean, there are billions, trillions, trillions probably of planets. I don't even know how big a quadrillion is, but there's probably, I don't know, but there are so many planets, so many stars, so many star systems, so many, what does this mean? Does it mean that life is, once do we find life somewhere, and does it mean that there's life everywhere and so that it's not so unique? Or does it mean that we're absolutely unique in the universe? And for one, I don't believe that. I don't
I
believe
don't either.
absolutely unique. But I think it's, for the whole of humanity, people, well, not the whole of it, but for a long time in humanity, people have leaned on religion to answer these types of questions, right? And there weren't these types of questions. There weren't questions about space, right? Because they used to think there was a crystalline structure wrapped around the earth, or they used to think that the earth was, different, right? And so, anyway, so the point that I get to is, like, the more we find out, it makes me think, like, okay, well, what's past that 13.6 billion year
You're fucking me up.
year uh, horizon that we can't see, right?
Yeah.
And and um and if there's something beyond that, how the fuck big is that, right?
Yeah.
And that, it's not, well, it's not an existential threat. It's an existential, it's like zooming out on Google Maps, but times whatever, times infinity. And that is so hard to comprehend for me. And religion doesn't solve that for me, right? I'm not a religious person. I grew up religious. Not I technically kind of wasn't. I always questioned everything, and which is why I think I ended up not being religious, because there was never an answer, and the more that I question, the more that people say, well, questioning isn't faith, and these kinds of weird things, right? And so,
Unless you're Jewish, then
yeah.
you're
Well,
supposed to question it.
is that true?
Yeah,
Yeah.
that is 1,000,000% true. Yes.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. So mine, I was Methodist. That's what I
Well,
was
yeah, I grew up Catholic, so we're not supposed to question anything either.
Yeah. Yeah. So the truth is, though, that I ended up really just, so I start thinking about how minuscule and unimportant the things that we're doing here are. And 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 while that can be scary, it's very, very scary, right? Because, just like the dinosaurs, we're going to blink, and 750 million years or 350 million years, whatever it is, 200, whatever, 200 million years are going to pass, and it won't even matter. I wasn't here, and everything's been covered over, and the earth will be dead in 4 billion years, right? Or whatever it is, whenever the sun explodes. What is it, a billion?
A
So
billion, something like that. Yeah.
yeah. So the truth is, though, that doesn't matter. And so the grounding piece, the whole, let me sum up the end. The ending is this: it does matter. It matters because it is so precious. Life is so, 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 so unique to the entity that experiences it.
Mhm.
And not just me, not just you, not just my kids, or but flies and everything else. It's um and it's special. It's really special. You don't get to do it again. You get one chance.
Yep.
You get one time ever in an infinite universe, you know. And I have to believe that the universe is infinite. I don't believe that I don't like to believe that it will end in a cold, dark, like when you start looking at what happens in a trillion years or whatever, like it's supposed to spread out and cool off, and everything's supposed to die, and the elements eventually break apart. But I just have to believe that it's on a conveyor belt, recycling through black holes and things. That's what I like to believe. But honestly, maybe that's just another form of faith, you know. And what the other thing is, on an infinite timeline, and here's the other piece. On an infinite timeline, given an infinite amount of possibilities, don't you think that there's an infinite chance that I'll get to experience this again, you know?
In my opinion, yes.
Yeah.
And I really like, after you've gone through all that, I want to share with you not only my fear, but the impetus for that question,
Hmm.
because I've interviewed 30 some odd people. I've gone over this once about 15 episodes ago. So anyone listening right now knows
Okay.
approximately what I'm talking about.
I can't wait to hear it. Good.
Since I was a very, very small child, and unfortunately, when I was very young, my parents thought I had a learning disability or I was, autistic or something because I didn't talk much. I
Mm.
didn't pay attention in class. What had been happening was I wasn't challenged enough,
Yeah.
and I was thinking. I was trying to process reality, and I ended up skipping a grade and ended up having a 135 IQ in second grade.
Mm.
Apparently that entire time, I remember it, they don't, but I'd been thinking about infinity, thinking about, the fact that the universe as we knew it, although expanding, has an end, and at that end is a
What is it?
blackness. It's a
Yeah.
blackness. There's nothing.
Mm.
And that has absolutely terrified me, haunted my dreams, and given me panic attacks
Yeah.
from the age of 5.
I don't think
Un
I knew what it was until I was in my 20s, and that's when I learned what the panic attack was because I finally was treated for it because I ended up in the emergency room because I couldn't stop thinking. When I think about space, I feel like I'm falling, and that's the worst.
Yeah,
Because you know what I mean? Like that's so I don't do that anymore. Like I
like,
don't let my mind do that anymore.
not only
Yeah.
were we born a couple weeks apart in the same year,
Yeah.
but what we are, and you can go back and listen to my past episodes, and you
Yeah.
will hear me talk about this. I
Yeah.
I have been utterly terrified of this idea since I was a small child.
Yeah.
Is that really hell?
Yeah.
The vacuum, or do we find another universe or what? And I start to obsess to the point where I can't stop myself.
Wow.
And the
Yeah.
mind just,
Yeah, and it keeps going, right? And
yeah,
it piles one piece of for me, that's what happens. It piles one piece upon another,
yep,
and each conclusion is more terrifying than the last,
yeah,
right? It's
yeah,
like for me, I'm like, "Oh my God, is this oh, so that would mean," and then that would mean, and then each time that happens, I feel smaller and smaller, and I feel like I'm falling. It's awful. So I don't. I really try hard not to think about it, but it's awful. I mean, it's like it's this weird. It is almost an obsession. It
mhm,
is because it's hard for me not to think about because it's so fascinating to me.
yeah,
Like it's so fascinating that like what even is everything, right? And so, and we sound like just a couple of weird stoners or something, but
well, Star Trek nerds at the very least.
yeah, 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 that's right. But you know, the truth is that it's just well, there is a truth that we know now, right? And that's that there is a universe and there are, you know, there space is not completely empty, right?
Right.
But we still don't know some of the stuff like dark matter and all that other stuff. Anyway, we don't have to go into that. So my existential crisis is always that you know that we're flying around in a black void,
Yeah.
and that's that's it, and like that's how the rest of the universe is, and what and eventually it leads to all these other conclusions about well, if there are other races, will we ever meet them, like animal or alien type of life? I mean, just all these things, and it's so fascinating and so interesting. But at the same time, because of the distances that I think about in my mind, it's so frightening to me.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Of course. And I think a lot of that also has to do intrinsically with ego, because you and I and the rest of humanity are thinking or inferring naturally that
Mhm.
whatever is out there is going to be some sort of carbon-based
Oh, sure. Yeah, yeah. And it may
life
not.
form.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
it very possibly could be something that could occupy that negative darkness that, you know, because
Hang on. I
yeah,
gotta get this book I just read. I gotta tell you what it is. Hang on.
okay.
Um, Sorry, I was looking for it. I can't find it.
No,
I
that's
think I checked it out from the library. That's why. It's by the guy who wrote what's that one that book where Matt Damon? Matt Damon wasn't in the book, but he lands on Mars and
The
he's like
Martian.
The Martian. The guy who wrote The Martian wrote a new book,
Okay.
and it's really good. And they're in the book. It's about spacefaring humans, and they meet an alien life form, and it's so cool and it's so interesting. That had my mind spinning. But this is another one that I've been reading, which is called Scale,
Okay.
and it's by Jeffrey West, but it's the universal laws of growth, and different things, sustainability, or cities as organisms and things like that. But it talks about scale, like how things scale and how things grow. Anyway, it's cool. Sorry, wasn't the book I wanted to show you. I can't remember what the other one is called. I'll have to look it up.
Oh, that's all right. But I
I'll look
mean,
it up. Yeah.
where I think where all of that comes into play, uh, that's why human beings become utter like spiritual, because you meet these unanswerable, not just unanswered, but unanswerable questions. And in order to comfort oneself, you invent, okay? You put faith, or you put your heart into something that makes these questions and these fears, it satiates them.
Yeah.
You know what
Yeah.
I mean? So
Yeah.
so you want to put a nice big bow on it. And I don't want to get into my whole bent on what I feel the Christ was, because I would piss a lot of people off, and be like, people wouldn't accept it anyway, even if I told them. But what it all comes down to, I think, in that regard, is we can't answer this.
Sure.
It'll never happen in our lifetimes. And
Mm.
even if we do get certain answers, we're never going to get the entire scope of the picture. So you either resign yourself to not knowing, which isn't in my nature,
Yeah. Yeah.
or
Me
or,
neither. Yeah.
or you put it on faith that there is a greater purpose.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and what that greater purpose for me has become it. So I think everyone can find what their greater purpose is, though. I think it's an individual thing. I don't have like faith that there's some greater design or greater purpose, because there just isn't. I mean, to me there isn't.
Mhm.
So in my mind, it's really what you make it, right? So if my greater purpose is to be here and make music and um, work at being at a tech company and to get cancer, and uh, but also raise like three kids that I love and try to make sure that they have the best shot at a life that they get to enjoy and love and be happy in. I mean, you know, that has to be part of my greater purpose, because they don't have anyone else. It's me
Yeah.
and my wife, and so it becomes a responsibility almost, because you're responsible for these creatures' growth and abilities, and not directly, right, not directly responsible for their abilities, but directly responsible for nurturing and giving them the things that they deserve and need in life. And so um I think being sick for me also helped me to refocus some of the negative self-destructive tendencies I have into way more positive and nurturing and selfless acts. I try. I mean, I try every day. I am not a success. Um,
Well, I mean,
like
there is there's the self-obsession of addiction.
yeah,
I suffer from it, you suffer from it. We both have small children. I mean, I have a 21-year-old daughter, but I have a 3-year-old son too. I hit
uh,
the
yeah,
family reset button. So
yeah,
we're both older dads, and we're both in recovery,
Mhm.
that that addiction is self-obsession, in all honesty.
Yeah, yeah, to an extreme. Yeah, it's
To
and it's really a negative ego loop too, you
Yeah,
know? And it results in perfectionism and some other things that don't help because you can never reach that it's unattainable, some of the standards I hold for even myself,
yeah,
and certainly doesn't help for standards I hold other people to, because if I'm holding myself to these high standards, I kind of also, like, by default put everyone else in those into
exactly.
those same buckets, and when they don't meet my sort of expectations, I get upset,
Yeah,
and I mean, it depends on the venue, right? So if it's like with my family, I react differently than if it's somebody in a mall parking lot who's yelling at me because my kid touched her car.
yeah.
That's a different. I have different expectations of people in public than and when someone does that, I react much differently than when something happens like that with someone I know, right?
Oh, sure.
Um, but and it's not always healthy. It's a little some of the things that I that and you're right. It's I mean, addiction and alcoholism and things like that are very selfish diseases. And they're very difficult to overcome, even just and if anybody's ever been in a program of any kind or had any therapy of any kind, um, you sort of realize that it's, well, it's a disease, and
It's
it's,
straight up
yeah,
a mental disease.
yeah, and it's a selfish, um I mean, it's a way to protect yourself, right? So people do this stuff to protect themselves and to feel better. You do these things because they self-soothe at first, right? Maybe they make you less anxious or whatever it is around people, but eventually they take over and they become the problem
Mm,
that you were trying to escape in the first place. When then they feed that more. For me, that's what happened. It fed itself, and it made me a complete, like, I was a different person. I was
yeah,
just it, and just not a likable or good person. I did not behave well, and um, so I had to stop. And I remember the first time I went through some of that stuff, at a young age, and seeing these guys that were my age that I thought were old. Now
yeah,
I'm like, I'm not old, like,
yeah,
I remember looking at those guys and going, man, you fucked up your life, bro.
yeah,
Just thinking that, like, God, I can't, because you're judging, you're still like, you're still not learning, you're trying, but you're just judging these guys for the things that, like, almost happened to me. I almost wasn't gonna be married anymore, and I, because of my behavior, the way that I behaved when I was drinking.
yeah. Because
And
you had that thinking problem. It's not drinking, it's the thinking. It's
yeah,
the way you
yeah,
think when the drink is involved.
yeah. And it's completely, I think that the truth is, and I'm really lucky that I have a wonderful, supportive wife, who's seen me at my best and worst. And it's I wouldn't remember anything sometimes. Did you know what you said last night? No. These kinds of things, and it was just that, that's just not the kind of person you can be. I can't be that kind of person either. So and I held, again, from some of that perfectionism, I hold myself to a standard that's higher than that. I can't do that,
Yeah.
so anyway, yeah, man, so that's what I've been doing for the last few years.
With the and we're taking out of, the equation the fact, Sunset put out some incredible fucking music in that time
Oh,
period too. Like,
yeah.
incredible. Like
Yeah,
if you
well,
want to take like anyone who
with
loved
pain and
Braid,
art together.
anyone who loved Braid and loved Massive Attack, if you kind of put those together, you kind of get Sunset. Like there's that whole you know, the electronics are in there, the you know, the really gut level songwriting that has that uplift is still there. Your the lyrics are still perfection
Oh,
as
man.
yours have always been.
I appreciate that so much.
But
It's
I followed you since the Firebird project was the Firebird band was the Firebird suite. You know, like there's I've taken this entire journey, you know,
yeah.
as a spectator to your triumphs. And you know, I'm not gonna lie, there was a part of me that just knew you were as fucked up as I was. You know, you don't get to be as creatively, you know, intense as you are without having that seed of just,
There's
you
there's
know,
some kind of obsession there.
yeah,
Yeah.
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 I didn't know how similar we actually were.
Well, if you look at the name of the first Firebird band album, it's The Setting Sun and Its Satellites, and it's just a, a reference really to the fact that it's the same for everyone, and it's still here. It's gonna be here. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
It's like it's just ubiquitous, weird, like reference to space and our, the system we live in. But man, it's just but I tell you, I think that fear, I think that part of that fear and that existential fear that I've had my whole life has led me to try to do things um, in a big way. I've always been an emotive person, and I don't mean like emo. I just mean emotive. Like I just have a lot of um, empathy, a lot of I pick up on the vibes of people around me, and I can become that easily. Like I can get swept up,
yeah,
and to me, creating, I get swept up in it. When I talk to my wife sometimes about it, she's like, "Why don't you just go out and write for a couple hours?" And it's like, if I go out to write, I'm going to be out there like, for the rest
mhm,
of the night,
yeah,
and maybe into tomorrow, right? And but part of that is I get a lot of energy, from other people. I
yeah,
just do. I always have. And I haven't had a band like to play with, like guys that I play with, like in a room for a while. Sunset really started out me and this guy Steve just kind of on the computer writing stuff, and then we eventually turned it into a band, and then we toured as a band, and then
mhm,
but the last record was literally me in my studio. I mean, some of the songs I wrote on my phone, like with like drum machines and stuff on my phone, and then turned them into songs in a regular, in my studio. And um, but I get so much energy from working with other people, and some of those records, like that we did, it's all vibe, and it's all just there's no I don't think I always went into that stuff trying not to leave anything on the table, just go all out and get it all out.
oh yeah,
And I don't even know half the things I was singing about, but I look back, I'm like, oh, I know what that's about now. You know what I mean? Like
yeah.
but at the time I'm just
Well,
throwing my emotions out there.
going back to the beginning of it all, though, I mean, like people called it emo, but what it really was, do you remember back in like the early to mid '90s? They didn't call us emo; we were melodics.
Yeah,
You
well,
guys
yeah,
play melodic hardcore. You're melodics,
yeah.
and like
Yeah, for me, it was like I think we got into like I got into Fugazi, and then well, first I was in the Minor Threat in like when I was in maybe seventh grade or something like that. Someone showed it to
yep,
me,
yep,
and it was like this is it changed my life, because up until then, I had been listening to like Huey Lewis and the News, and I also was listening to like 7th and 8th grade, listening to a lot of 6th grade, a lot of rap, like hip, like old, like Run DMC, LL Cool J, all
Yep.
that stuff back in the day. And you know, of course, I was like hiding my NWA tapes and stuff from my mom, you know,
That's
like
my life.
yeah,
That's my childhood. Yes.
yeah, listening and playing Super Mario Brother and listening to NWA and Easy E and Two Live Crew and all that stuff,
Yeah.
and just bad, awful stuff right at the time. I mean, now the stuff that's out there is even worse, but well, it's hard to get worse than Two Live Crew and Easy E, but
Yeah.
uh,
Easy
but
Does It, still such a good record.
actually, yeah, it is. Um, but I forgot what I was telling you. I think I got sidetracked on talking about
The
old
way
punk
the way
music.
we got
Oh
into
yeah,
like the
yeah.
whole
So
melodic hardcore
I got
thing.
into punk, yeah, and then I got introduced to like, oh, you should hear this band like, you know, Naked Ray Gun or Peg Boy, you know,
Oh
and
God, so
and
good. Yeah.
like we'd be skating and just blasting, you know, and of course Green Day came in like well before they were Green Day Dookie, you know, but like Green
Oh
Day,
yeah.
before,
Yep.
like when they did what 2000 hour light years or whatever it was,
Yep.
um, and Jawbreaker, and then of course, then I remember I was a freshman in high school, and this guy's like, "Oh, you should check out Fugazi because you like Minor Threat, like it's the same guy." So I did, and it was like that just was like that was it.
That was
Everything I
Bulldog Front waiting room era. Yeah.
Yeah, that was I think the first album I listened to was Repeater,
Okay.
and I was just like, maybe it was, anyway. The first one I bought was Waiting Room, but the one I listened to first was Someone Let Me Borrow Repeater, and I
Mm.
was like, this is what I want to do. This is the kind of music I like. I don't like any other music. And then I bought everything from Discord. I bought like we got into Hoover and all the Discord band, like, and
That
I remember
Lincoln Hoover split 7 inches.
yeah, that
Oh,
is the best one. Yeah,
that's
the
the
Lincoln
best
Hoover
one.
one. Yes. Yes. And then I remember my friend was like, you should check this one out because it was Nation of Ulysses. And
Hmm.
I heard it, hated it. But
Really?
then at first I hated it. And then I don't know how I revisited it, but then I revisited it and then I loved it. I loved it, you know. And then of course, you know, actually right at the beginning of the pandemic, right before we went into lockdown and before I went to have surgery, I had just been diagnosed. I went and saw the makeup at
Oh,
the Empty Bottle in Chicago, um, and that would have been in March of 2020, and that was great. It was good. A guy in that band plays in a band with one of the guys who used to play in the Firebird project and Firebird Suite. He's I think the drummer, or he was the touring drummer of the makeup. Um, I forget what the band is called that he plays. Hammered Hulls, maybe, or one of
Hammered
those.
Hulls. That's
Yeah,
exactly what it is.
yeah. Chris Wilson on
Yep.
drums. Yeah, yeah. He's the old drummer for us. But
Yep.
yeah, so yeah, and just fun, you know. Like I mean, I always love that DC stuff. But anyway, but yeah, dude, it was and that was like what Pegboy was. Pegboy was like it was punk, but it was also bordering on a little bit of hardcore. Like it was punk, but then they got into like I didn't get into that much melodic hardcore. I got into it when we started listening to it. Someone introduced us to emo as a term, and
Yeah.
like my friend had a license plate that emo core. My brother had a license plate that emo 11 in high school. You know, it's like 1993 or whatever. Like, and nobody knew what that was. You know, it wasn't a thing. And like, and
Oh yeah.
you'd
That's
be
the
like,
first
"What
time I
kind
heard
of
it was.
music do you like?" You'd be like, you're not gonna know.
Ye-
Yeah, let's just not talk about it." You know?
I remember when Peg Boy Cha Cha D'Amour came out. It was that perfect conflagration of everything that, Naked Ray Gun had been doing,
Yeah,
but with that little bit of DC thing, even though they were Chicago, there
yeah,
there were there was a really great cross section of almost pop sensibility
yes,
injected
yes.
into punk
Y-
and hardcore, and it was just
all I can hear,
perfect.
all I think about is skate. Like when I hear Peg Boy, literally imagine skating this launch ramp at my friend's house because we listened to it so much. And it was just, so, I mean, honestly, I just put it on recently again. Peg Boy is a band I keep revisiting. It's
Mhm.
not, I don't even have to be in the mood. You put on Peg Boy and I'm like, let's go, you know,
Yeah.
like I'm just like, yeah, it's so good. Strong Reaction was the
Strong
album.
Reaction's the best.
Yeah. And then there was it was like a 5-song EP or something. I don't remember what that one was.
Cha Cha D'Amour?
Was that it? No, I think
I
there was another one. I could be wrong. Anyway, maybe that was it. I don't remember. But yeah, I loved that. And then Naked Ray Gun. Yeah, man. But so all that I found my way to like that was like the precursor to like the Fugazi and that whole emo scene. And then some of our friends played in a band, and then they started playing with other bands, and we met all these guys. And then I went away to school and joined a band, and then dropped out of school. Like I went
Mhm.
away to college. I was 17 because I was always young for my age.
Yep.
And
Well, we were born the same time, so yeah, we were always the youngest kids in class.
that's right. Yeah. And
Yeah.
you skipped a grade, right? You said so.
Yeah.
You would have been even way younger, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So I went to Champaign, U of I in Champaign, Illinois, and I went to go see a show before even my first class because the guy who was playing in the band had played in a band I liked in high school in the Chicago scene. And I'm like, let me just go check it out, you know. And my friend was going from high school. We had both gone down there, not together, but we just turned out we were going down there. We used to skate together a lot, so we went and saw the band, and with him and a couple of other guys from high school that I knew. And I ended up leaving the show as a member of the band. Just started talking to the drummer after the show, and that's how I joined Braid. That was
Yeah.
it. So it was fun. It was a fun thing.
Well, I think what's fortunate for you
But
is
that then became like what people started defining as emo, which
yeah,
is weird to me because I did not define emo at all, but with what we were doing, you know, I mean, we kind of did, we kind of knew we were kind of part of that scene, but even back then the term was frowned upon, you know, I
yeah,
mean, 100%, like people were like, oh, you're emo, whatever, you know,
yeah,
like, yeah,
especially at that time period, but we had such great examples at that point because you had everyone from Hum to Sunny Day Real Estate to Mineral to Fugazi being considered emo. Even Quicksand were considered.
that was weird to me when people were calling Quicksand emo. It's weird to me to hear Hum as emo because I always thought of them more like Smashing Pumpkins metal than
Yeah,
yeah,
space rock.
yeah, yeah,
They're a space rock band,
yeah,
but they
yeah,
have the pedigree, so you kind of have to lump them in with hardcore, even though they don't have a
yeah,
hardcore sound.
yeah,
And the same thing with you guys, because as much as you had the pedigree, because you all came from it, to me, it was really fantastic indie rock.
yeah, yeah. We have
Because
to, yeah,
to me, like you had more in common with Texas is the Reason than you did with Sunday Day Real Estate. And when you say Texas is the Reason, that's a fucking indie rock band.
mm. Well,
Early Jimmy Eat World is an indie rock band. They're not
they've
emo.
got that melodic, like indie rock sing along type stuff. Although we took it a lot more math, you
Yeah,
know.
you got
Mhm.
artier. You're far more prog, which I would kind of say fit you in more with Sunny Day just because Sunny Day were a prog rock band
Yeah, yeah,
who
yeah.
came from hardcore, you
Yeah,
know?
at the time, yeah, and now they're, like, synonymous with, like, big emo, you know?
Yeah,
So, yeah, it's
but
it's but it's interesting. I mean, it is, you know, like, the whole, like, evolution of all that, like, emo, like, well, it's punk, it's really just hardcore, well, it's indie, you know? I mean, it had different names, you know? It's
it,
still the same music.
it started off as we called everybody you're melodic.
Yeah,
You're
yeah, that's
melodic.
right, yeah,
You're
yeah.
melodic. Like, and as much as I used to go along with it when I'd be going to like a Sick of It All show when I was like in sixth grade y- or a 7 Seconds show, when 7 Seconds started to get really melodic, I was like, yeah, okay, so I am melodic. So what?
Sure, yeah.
And the rules changed, but there was always the stigma, and there was always like hiding the t-shirt from even the people who you started getting weird with to begin with, because we were all weird to begin with, man.
Everybody was weird. Yeah.
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 And like, why can't I just be weird with you and not adhere to the same rules and strictures that you're holding yourself up to? That was the part that always upset me.
Yeah.
But I
No, oh,
think,
not being allowed to sort of be who you
yeah,
wanted to be because it didn't fit in with the idea of what you want to be, right?
yeah.
I mean, or what other people think that idea is. I know it's like this weird, like, but here's the thing. For me, I also was like a new wave kid. I
Mm,
loved The Cure. I loved Depeche Mode. I loved
I
like
named my
more
daughter after a
conservative.
Cure song.
You did.
A Letter to Elise. That's what I
Oh,
named my daughter after.
nice. Ah, that's great. I
They
mean,
were my first favorite band when I was
me
a
actually,
young kid.
I think they were, well, they were my first favorite band who wasn't like I mean, if you look back at like 1979 or so, they were way more punk than new wave, but
Yeah,
they still had that whatever that new wave thing was. Like if you listen to like Boys Don't Cry album, that was my first album that
yeah.
I bought and I loved it. Loved that was it. That turned that changed it. I think that must have been freshman year or something, or maybe it was summer before freshman year. But before that, I was listening to all that rap and all that other stuff. And then
Yeah.
like, and I remember going and buying like Bon Jovi and like Guns N' Roses and stuff at the time. I think it was in seventh grade or something. And then at some point it just flipped. It was all like I got into punk, and then like punk led the way to everything. I mean, but then there was again, you get into all this punk stuff, and there's so many different versions of what punk is, whether it's emo or indie or whatever it is. Everybody pretty much probably grew up listening to a lot of the same bands anyway. We
Yeah.
were all listening to The Cure and listening to Depeche Mode and all that stuff, but
Cr-
also listening to Talking Heads and things like that, right? So,
Oh,
yeah,
my first concert was The Clash opening up for The Who. My dad took me,
yeah, that's awesome.
and that's Combat Rock Tour. So we're talking 1983.
Yeah,
We were pretty young in 83.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
You know what I
yeah,
mean?
yeah.
And like my examples, I had a father who was a musician who was
Okay.
very open-minded, Vietnam vet, psychopath, loved music, drummer. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
So,
yeah,
like he shared a lot with me.
sure.
So like he loved the MC5. He loved the Stooges.
Yeah, yeah.
And
I
he
didn't
loved
get into them till later. I think till like college. Like I didn't, I didn't even know. Like I mean, I guess I knew, but I was more like, like the Descendants, Big Boys, things like that. But just, bands that came like right on that after that, right? So,
my
but
f- my
more that
f-
punk.
my first love was T-Rex.
Okay.
I was
Yeah.
5 years old.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it wasn't Electric Warrior, it was the Slider,
Okay.
because that was my dad's favorite album by
Well,
them.
yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So, I mean, like, I kinda had that information going into it, but just like you're saying, the hip hop thing was so inescapable, and it
Yeah.
was it was so dangerous and so fun. So, of course, we were getting into that, but also The Cure was very much happening at that point, and
Yeah.
Guns N' Roses were very much happening at that point,
Yeah.
so that
Yeah.
was all part of the story too.
Yeah, it was. And I think Guns N' Roses, like that like Guns N' Roses was like were like the bad boys of hair metal, right? And then, aside from like Motley Crue, right? But like the Guns N' Roses were like kind of a lot more bad boy.
Well,
And
they were
then
into the Misfits, they were into the Damned. Those guys
well,
that
and that's how you get Jane's Addiction, right? From there, right? And
mm,
then Jane's Addiction, I mean, because you can almost see that progression, right? And
mhm.
Jane's Addiction was amazing, like like that first and second record. Well, I don't know that I love the first record. I think I got into them at the Ritual de la Habitude. No, yeah, it must have been Ritual because that's I think when Been Caught Stealing came out. It must have been 1990, and then I
89,
went
90,
back.
yeah.
Yeah, and then I went back and got the album before that, the gray
Nothing
cover,
shocking.
Nothing Shocking, which was a great,
Oh,
great album.
incredible.
Yeah,
Mountain songs on that.
great. Yeah, greatest. And But the one before that, I think there was one before that that I didn't love.
The live album, that's Jane Says album.
Okay, yeah, I didn't
No
love it.
studio tracks, it's all live. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, I mean, maybe that's why I didn't like it, because it
They
didn't
were
have
on
the
they were
production.
on the
Yeah.
Goth label at that point. They were on Triple X Records
Oh,
at
I
that
didn't know
point.
that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
but man, I mean, and again, but I had never, I don't think I ever had, it was always weird because going back to like your conversation about like, okay, you got to hide like this band from these guys or whatever. It
yep.
always felt like I had like different groups of friends. Like this group really was into these guys,
Yeah.
this one was into this, and with these guys, we listened to this. But I listened to all of it because I
Yeah.
thought I loved it all, and I would even listen, like my dad was into, he had like Hendrix records, and
Yep.
my mom and dad had seen Hendrix and the Doors and things like that, and so I got into that stuff.
Mhm.
I heard that stuff, and I still have his records from that. And I think they were huge Beatles fans, but that's just the part of what their time.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Um, and so, but anyway, yeah, I always had. We're always, and what happened though for me with music was that up until I discovered on my own like rap music, right? And then until I was introduced to punk music, I had never had such a sea change or such a, like, as soon as I listened, the first day, and I have to say it again, the first day that I listened, I remember just listening to Minor Threat and being like, what is this? What
Yeah.
is this? I've never heard anything like this in my whole life. And why is this so good? Why does
Yeah.
this speak to me? And I mean, we can talk about why, but I mean, they were singing about like kid shit, like
Yeah.
pretty much like fighting and not drinking, and like things you couldn't do anyway, or you didn't even want to at that point because I was only 12 or
Yep.
13, right?
Yep.
Or whatever it was. And but I remember being like, I found what I like. I'm into punk music,
Mhm.
and that was it. It just opened the door, flung the door open. And before that, I had been listening to, rap was the big thing for me. And then, but before that, it was like Huey Lewis and the News, and that was fine. It was fine.
Yeah,
you know.
nothing
But
wrong with
I,
it.
but I never loved it. I was never like, God, this is so good. Never understood music until punk came along for me, really. But it opened so many doors because what it did was it exposed you to so much. And so I think it was people trying to do a lot with not a lot, right?
Yeah.
And what that does is give you some real emotion, like real emotiveness, right? Real, like I mean, you can't listen to Minor Threat and not be like raw, like you
Yeah.
just feel it, and you can't listen to like old Stooges stuff without being like, oh yeah, I get it, because they're not kids, they're not joking, they're not just writing, they're not trying to write a pop song, they're just doing it because that's what they do,
Yeah.
you know and I think that just spoke to me in a way that was just so profound, I think.
Same thing with the Bad Brains first, the ROIR cassette. That there was something so perennial about that album
Mhm.
that it felt like I'd already known it when I'd first heard it.
Yeah, like it spoke to you,
Yeah.
you like understood, you got it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, there was it was as if it had always been a part of me
Hmm.
and I was just now recognizing it.
That's amazing.
Yeah. Yeah, like,
Yeah.
"Oh, I have this hand."
Yeah, oh, yeah,
That's
this is cool.
legitimately
Yeah,
the
this is
emotion.
what I'm into, yeah,
Yeah.
I understand this, yeah, 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 I mean, I can't, and look, like I grew up, I also played like clarinet and saxophone and I had
Mhm.
bass clarinet and all going through all this. And, I was like classically trained and I thought it was fun. I liked doing it all. But like having that sort of background and then hearing this was just like, oh, now I know like what, you know what I mean? Now I understand feeling. Like now I understand this. And I think people have those kinds of, like those kinds of experiences with classical music who really fall in love with, a certain composer as well. I know that, right?
Oh, yeah.
I tend to like a lot of like Baroque music. I like a lot of like chamber music
Yeah.
style, like sonatas and things like that, right? Um, a- because I just like to have that relaxation, and you can feel it. You can feel the emotiveness but it depends on who's playing it too. In
Yeah.
any case, but yeah, up until then, it was just this vanilla kind of thing. Then it came along. It was like, oh, you can play guitar if you want. That's cool. I'm gonna do that. You
Yeah.
know, Actually, I failed horribly at it for a long time, and I still when I joined Braid, I feel like I had really only been playing guitar a lot for like a year at that time. I think I had started around 16. I mean, I'd always had a guitar lying around, but I wasn't good at all. I even tried, the summer before my senior year of high school, I had even tried playing in a few bands playing guitar. And I played in a couple and it was fun, but we played mainly just like punk music. And I usually just sang in a band without playing guitar.
Yeah.
And I remember doing a band where I did play guitar, and that was fun. Me and actually Steve Holmes from American Football,
Hmm.
we played in this punk band with our friend, this guy Gubby, sang for us, and he played in a band with some other guys that from other bands. But Yeah, it was fun, man. And we just did that, and then but I sucked so bad. Oh, man, I sucked so bad. And then I tried to play in a band with this guy, with Neil Keener, from Planes Mistaken for Stars. That's probably where
Oh,
you know him from. Um,
yep.
yeah, and he and I knew him in high school. I actually sold him my car when I went away to college, because I couldn't take it. I couldn't take it with me. So yeah, but I tried to play in a band with him, and I remember playing with him and this guy Steve, and I just couldn't keep up. Like they're like, yeah, I think we're gonna go a different way, man. So yeah, we'll see you later. Then that was like the summer after my senior year, I think, and then I went down and joined Braid. But I just remember not being good enough to keep up because they were super mathy. Like they were trying to be mathy, and like he was into like Soul Side and some other bands,
Oh, yeah.
which is great. And then but the guitarist was more into like that like Chicago stop start like Gage and some of that other stuff. And
Yeah.
we all grew up loving that stuff. We all did. And but I just couldn't hang. I couldn't keep up at the time because I was so used to playing punk, like
Mhm.
just 3 chords or 4 chords and in different combinations. So I remember sitting down and just playing every day for like 3 hours because I'm like, I can't. I have to play guitar. I have to like this. This is what I want to do, and it's great. So yeah, that's how I did it.
So that angular attack that you perfected by the time you'd gotten into Braid, that was something
Well,
that
I
you
would say I was definitely still learning how to play guitar when I got in Braid.
right, right. There was
I pretended that I wasn't learning, but yeah.
there was something that, like, really tastefully straddled melodic and noise.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know what I mean? That you guys really, really pulled off in a beautiful way because that was the thing about Braid, right? Like there was like people call it mathy. To me it was like on the precipice of completely falling apart into something almost psychotic, but it would get reined in with melody,
Mhm.
and there was
And
that
well,
tension.
I think that I never appreciated the way that it pulled together, at the time. I mean, I think I did at the time. I think there was a time when I didn't appreciate it as much, that some of the vocals that Bob did that would pull it together because of the way that he would sing over these parts that were going crazy. But
Mhm.
we would literally, be like, okay, well, let's just let's just do this. And we would just call out a number and just do, okay, we're gonna do 2 times, then 1 time, then 7 times, and then because that was like the area code of,
Yeah.
of the place we lived, 217. So, you know, um, or like, you know, but I always had I always had a knack for melody, for guitar, like for like musical melody.
Mhm.
Um, I don't think that I was ever a great singer. I liked to sing, but especially in the early days, I was pretty awful. I mean, I'll just be honest. Um, and so um,
You were an austere singer for sure, in my opinion.
yeah, yeah. Um, the truth is though that I was just wailing my heart out to be just because it was all emotive, man. I mean, I didn't really know how else to be, you know.
It was
Like,
honest.
yeah, I wasn't trying to be anything. I was just trying to do it.
Mhm.
But man, I think for me with guitar melody, I always had a way of trying to, if something didn't feel right, I would always try and tie it together with something like over the top, or if I couldn't, if me trying to do something over top didn't make sense, then I would just hang back and do something simple. But it was always, I think part of me playing in like band growing up in school was knowing that you had a place, for me at least, in the
Mhm.
larger picture, no matter kind of like like in this part, this is where I'm going to chill and be quiet because this is this part, you know, or whatever it is. And in this part, but I also think in the beginning we were all trying to be heard so badly that we were freaking out, and that's why it was on the verge of collapse, right? I think you know, as you play and as you perfect what you're doing, or not perfect but continually improve, um you I think that's where you learn constraint, right? But
Right.
yeah.
But, I mean, like, I think even way back then, you knew how to stay in the pocket.
Oh yeah, of course. Yeah, I mean, you have to have rhythm. If you don't have rhythm, or you can't stay on beat, or whatever, there's a huge problem. But we didn't have a problem with that. Certainly, yeah, yeah. No, it was just, I think everybody was just. I also think that some of that early chaotic stuff was, we were just trying on stuff. Even Braid, you know, even in the early days of Braid, if you listen to that first album to the third album, really, and
Mhm.
there's a huge progression. And the first album was, you know, a dump almost of 26 songs for each letter of the alphabet. And we just were like, yeah, we got to write an X song. Let's just do this, you know, like, you know, and then there were a lot of in between album songs that we would just be like, gosh, we really love this band Car Bomb from Austin, Texas.
Yeah.
We, you know, we'd be like, oh, let's write this. Oh, let's just freak out. All right, let's do this. Like, you know, I think we were just trying on different stuff. Like,
Yeah,
you
like,
know,
"Let's
like,
be like heroin on this song." Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
let's try like this. Like the thing about those days too, and it has to work with everybody else too, but at least in those days, we were all influencing each other because
Yeah.
we were all playing together, right? We were playing with Promise Ring and with Get Up Kids and all the bands, right? Jimmy Eat World, but then all the other bands that nobody's heard of, right? Like
Yeah.
Car Bomb and
And Chisel.
yeah, Chisel, Trigger Quintet, and like Blue Tip from DC,
Oh, they were so good.
and all these other bands, you know, Karate
Mhm.
and each of those things really, they were all so different, all of them so different, but all we were all in the same scene,
Yeah.
which is weird, right? Because they were all so different and so unique. And I think we all influenced each other. If you look back on some of those things, I mean, it was just everybody playing off each other, you know.
Mhm.
And being like, yeah, let's do that. Let's do that part where it's like karate in that part. I don't remember saying that, but I can imagine saying that. Or
Right.
let's do that Juno 44 part here, you know, or whatever it is, right? So, um, but man, that was fun. Those were good times. Yeah.
And I think it all, like, even though you made some pretty big stylistic switches between, when you went from Braid to the next project to the next project, there was always that same sensibility, of not only melodicism, but of urgency that carried over and carried over. So it never got stale, boring, but it never repeated itself either, which
Yeah.
I have to applaud you for that because all of your projects, yeah, it sounds like you on vocals, even though as a singer you've changed drastically.
Hmm.
There's a sensibility that carries over and that makes sense in the larger context of the body of work?
Man, I mean, you know, for you to say that, like for someone else to say that, and for me not to look at it myself and be like, God, I really hope people can see this as a body of work and understand that like that this goes to this is kind of a kind of cool to hear and I appreciate it. One thing that I always have said every time I try to do some new project is that I want to do something new. I don't want to rehash something I've done in the past. And it's not because I've been thinking lately, like, God, I want to do another like full just guitar rock, mathy, just kill it, kind of really fun rock band again. That's what I've been feeling like lately.
Mhm.
And it's just because I haven't done that in so long, you know?
Yeah.
And not only that, but like um but so in that case, though, then it would be fresh to me, right, and new, right? I still wouldn't go and try and write songs like Braid or like Sparrow or like some other like Sunset or the Firebird band. I mean, some of that sensibility from each one might come through. I just feel like I just keep, I get bored and I don't get, it's not that I get bored. It's just that when something feels stale to me, I kind of am done with it. I'm done.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, that I did that now. So let's try something new. But in any case, every project I do from a musical perspective, I try to take a different approach. Even the stuff I put out solo, which I wouldn't recommend anybody listen to. I really don't like it. I think I'm gonna take it down. But because I just that was just like a kind of like a here's some interesting sketches of songs that are different than other songs I've done.
See, I liked that stuff because it was intimate and immediate, and like the intention is obvious.
Okay. Yeah.
Here's what I did. Here's
Yeah.
what's going on right now.
Yeah.
It's from my hands and lungs to your ear
Yeah.
with zero filter. I think it would be a crime if you got rid of it.
Yeah.
But, I mean, that's just my opinion.
That's my like that's like my filter that I want to put on things, like
Right.
okay, that doesn't represent me, but the truth is that it did represent a point in time, and so I try not I actually don't take anything down.
Mhm.
But the truth is I always try to approach things differently. So if I were to start a thing tomorrow, it would be different than whatever I would start the next day, and if it's and the thing I was going to say is I think playing in I kind of want to this is I lost my train of thought earlier and now I remember what I was going to say. Playing in like group band and like band music, and playing with the group, you always had to rely on the other players, right? Because I was playing clarinet or bass clarinet in the band, and I know this sounds I sound like the biggest dork in the world, but the truth is like I knew my spot, right? And so you had to rely on the other people, and it was always organic. It was always this organic feeling, and the music isn't going to be the same if it's me and the 16 other or 27 other kids playing the music than it is with you and 27 other kids. It's going to be different, right?
Yeah.
And so I've always had that reliance on other people. um I love to collaborate. Like I love to work on stuff where I can feel like everybody's getting something out of it because that gives so much energy where
Yeah.
we're just all in it and we're just all like, yeah, I'm feeling this. I'm feeling this, right? And everybody's doing something interesting or cool or loves the groove that we're doing or whatever it is. And that's where I get my energy. And so when I don't get a chance to do it, which I haven't had in years just because of all the stuff I've been through,
Yeah.
um, it starts to eat away at me, right? Because I feel like I get stale, and I feel like I need that that interaction with people to create something. And that's why when you say like they feel like they have that urgency and that energy, it's because I don't think it's I don't think it's if it doesn't feel that way, I don't think it's important. Like I don't
Right.
think it's an important thing to release, you know. Um, I wouldn't want to go and just be like, okay, here's some chords and some music, you know. Um, and but it's also always about the guys and gals that you're playing with, you know, because you can't, you know, I can have, we can talk today and all this stuff, and you'll get my perspective, right, on 6 different projects I've done over the years, right? But you won't get the perspective of the guy who played in just one of those bands, who felt a certain way and all of that. And his perspective is what made that band what it is, like, right? The guys that I played in the band La Sparrow with, which is one of my favorite bands, one of my favorite projects I've ever done,
And
is the
one release.
yeah, one release.
Yeah.
And I wanted to do more, but at the time, uh, the guys I was playing with were about 5 years younger than me. There were 2 guys in the band, and maybe 6 years. I had met him on Craigslist. I was looking for a drummer and for the Firebird band, a new drummer, and I met the guy and we started playing. And I'm like, we should just start something new because I'm feeling it. I'm feeling something new. He brought this bass player along, and it was just like, this is great. This is great. This is different. And it was like right after the Setting Sun and Satellites,
Hmm.
and we had done that EP, the Drive EP, the Firebird band had, and it was right before Braid did our reunion, our original reunion tour in 2004. And you know, and I also was playing in another band at the time, and these guys were young, and so I think they were also a little bit jealous of the other bands I was playing in and all this other stuff. So we didn't get to like continue. You know, we didn't really get to. But they were like, I mean, that's what La Sparrow was. Like if like I want to do, like I would love to do that band again if those guys were into it, but they're all in different places. I don't even talk to one of them. Stood up at my wedding, and I don't know what happened. We don't talk to each other anymore. I think it's I can imagine that I did something that I don't remember,
Yeah.
and that may be that, but
But that La Sparrow
that's
record,
unfortunate stuff, you know.
that
But
that stands out. That stands out in a big way because that had it didn't sound like it, but it had the same vibe that something Mark Sandman from Morphine would have done. There's
hmm,
a there's a definite groove, like
we
heavy
had, yeah, there was
groove.
a groove, yeah, we really, but it was organic. It was just so deep, and you know, like I remember doing. I said, "Do you guys know anybody who can play like trumpet or saxophone?" Because I wanted to get some, especially on one song, and
That one sound that sounds like Angelo Badalamenti would have been involved in it.
yeah, Amsterdam, it's called.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
yeah.
yeah. It's super. I mean, that's like that was just that. You know, I think they knew the guys from high school, from the high school band, and they're like, because these guys had just graduated high school when I met them, and I think I was 24, 23, and like we just started this band to these two 18-year-old guys and me at 23, and it was maybe 24, maybe 25. I don't remember, but it was just so fucking raw, man. And the guys, those those these, like, I call them kids because these kids showed up with trumpets and saxophones, and just I was just like, you guys, when it hits this part, this is where you do this, and I need you to do. And I was explaining what I wanted them to do, and then they'd be like this. I'm like, yes, right. And then so they would just hit it, and it was just so there was so much energy. I think they were so stoked too to be there, right, to just to be recording. But man, that was a fun record to record. We recorded it at Truck Stop in Chicago. I don't think it's still around, but this guy Elliot used to own Truck Stop, and he was always known around Chicago. He did sound at Fireside Bowl and other places, and you know, toured with a bunch of, you know, cool bands and stuff. But he owned this studio, and I recorded it with this guy Griffin Rodriguez, and he just it was just there wasn't a lot of it wasn't like it is now. There wasn't a lot of oh, let's go in and fix this or do that, or you know, like it was
Yeah.
just like we just put it down, you know. So that was a real fun record. That's one of my highlights for sure, you know. Yeah.
it's incredible to hear that too, because it came across.
Yeah.
You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like
Thanks. Yeah.
it struck me in that manner, and like I'd said, there's that track specifically. Like it reminded me of something that if Angelo Badalamenti had kind of been in the studio with, I don't want to say Braid, but someone in a mathy indie format,
Yeah.
and that kind of like that groove hit in just that specific way. That's
Yeah.
why that's why I kind of like, mentioned morphine as well, because there's just that undertone of groove,
Yeah. Yeah.
and then you get the uplift, and then you get the noise, and it worked in a really, really special way. I
Yeah.
really wish you'd done more than one record with that band. I really do.
Believe me, actually, when I talk about doing another guitar rock band, I always start thinking like, boy, I should really get into using like delay again on the guitar and just making it real guitar driven with a nice groove under it. I start thinking about it, right? And then I'm like, okay,
Mhm.
now I'm overthinking it, so I don't want to color it. So but anyway, yeah, that is my favorite one. And if I'm going to say it for real, like I think that's my favorite record. Yeah,
Wow.
that I've done, and it's probably the least well known. Which is fine. That's just the way it is. I'm sure there are lots of musicians who can say the same, right? Where they're one of their favorite records is the least well known, or the ones that they've done.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, man, that's it. I'll tell you, like, I'm feeling the itch again, like real hard, and to just do something, do like put something together again, something really cool, and and I think, coming out on the other side of all this other shit that I went through, and look, everybody goes through shit, and I'm not special for for having had cancer and you know, having gone through all the other stuff we talked about.
Yeah.
Um, but to me, it's motivating, right? Because it's like it makes me understand and feel like that, I'm not done, I'm not done, so
Especially
yeah,
like if you
yeah,
take into consideration the fact that you did kind of conquer a lot to just get to where you are right now, just to be here to talk to me.
yeah.
Why not parlay that into something melodious, something that you know what I mean? Something that
Yeah,
has,
yeah,
like it can't just be your experience, especially, you know, you've been the fact that you've been shooting all of your emotions through the filter of recorded material since you were what, 19 years old?
yeah, even before that. I mean,
Yeah.
other bands that nobody's ever heard of before that.
Mhm.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
I'm just counting Braid into the equation. Like,
yeah.
you know, like you got into Braid in 95, right?
94, yeah.
94. So
Yeah, I
18.
turned 18, after I joined the band. Yeah,
So taking
yeah.
all of that history into consideration, and you live this like massive chunk of life that's trying, to say the least.
Mhm.
It begs to be shot through the prism of a musical entity.
Well, that's what being a musician is, right? That's what being
Yes.
an artist is, right? You have to channel that stuff. And the truth is that like I literally been like, okay, cool. I actually um finished building a studio above my garage recently. And so I'm really excited to it's not set up yet, but um unfortunately I went like like after all this stuff, like I started working again and we had our house fixed, a couple of things fixed. We had our kitchen redone recently, which is really nice. We're able to do that. But my basement flooded, and so I had my studio in the basement. And so
Oh,
I'm literally right now I'm dealing with insurance claims
Mhm.
Like I literally submitted the final insurance claim like the other day on a bunch of stuff. I mean, so, like a lot of gear, like pedals, guitar pedals, things that were just sitting in sewage. Unfortunately, there was we live.
Oh.
Our house is old. Our house was built in like 1920, so we
Mhm.
have to route it a lot, the sewer line, and we just didn't do it in time. In any case,
Boy, I wish you knew me back then because I would have done it for you really cheaply.
oh, yeah, yeah. Well,
Plumber.
I would use you. I would.
Mhm.
Um, so yeah, but so the insurance guys came and like the remediation guys came, and then they luckily I had to move all my stuff to my studio and they moved it all for me because I was emptying out the basement. But unfortunately now my new studio that I just finished, right, um, is filled with a ton of shit now because I was going to move it in nicely and set it all correctly, but it'll take a little time. But anyway, yeah, so I'm excited to do that, and there's some other stuff in the works. Like I'll probably at some point do another Sunset record, and but I'm really itching so badly to do something brand new again. And I think that I'll be honest, like sometimes that worries me. Sometimes I'm like, it doesn't worry me that I want to do that, but what worries me is that like with the Sparrow and someone like you followed, so like the
Yeah.
stuff I do, but it's hard to follow when someone keeps doing new stuff. And so I always wonder, like, should I just do it as this or should I do something new? And it just if it's new, it's new. That's just the way it is for me. Like if I
Yeah.
feel like it's something new and it's fresh and it doesn't really fit into what the other thing is, I don't just continue that old thing and just reinvent that name, because that was that, and maybe that was that group of people. Even though like with the Firebird band, I think I had a very large rotating cast of characters in that band.
Which
Um,
is why the name changed as many times as it did.
that's that's
Really.
correct. Yeah, yeah. That's why it was the Firebird Suite and the project and then band. Um, and then I was going to keep the name the Firebird Band for a while, and I did. We put out a couple of things that way, and you can actually see quite a difference between record number one and record number three, really, if you look
Oh
at
yeah.
the Drive as the second record. Um, but um, but yeah, and so I thought I was going to keep that, but then I felt like that's just stale now. Like it's just I don't want to keep doing that. I want to do something fresh
Look,
because that's not where my head is anymore. Does that make
right.
sense? Like
Yeah.
like I feel like it's almost like relationships. Like I'm not going to go back and try to revisit some relationship that didn't work out, right? Or for whatever reason just wasn't right, or I'm done with, or whatever it is. I'm not going to do the same thing with music.
No,
I mean,
one bite from a mad dog is enough. Let's
that's
face facts,
that's right. I mean, it doesn't mean that I won't. Like, I think the one constant, which I didn't actually ever expect to be a constant, is kind of the relationship I have with the Braid guys. I think
Yeah.
when we first originally broke up, we just thought like, that's it, we're done, and like, see you later. I'm gonna do my stuff. You guys do yours. Peace.
Yeah.
But over the years, we've just remained close, and we talk about doing things once in a while, and we've just been on permanent hiatus until it's not permanent anymore. We
No,
just decide
that
to do stuff when we
that's
want.
special. That's very special because, at this point, Braid is like an institution. Braid's a band that people are going to consistently return to and remember. So if you have that sort of halfway open door where you guys still enjoy each other's company
Right.
and
Well, if we want to play and have fun and just do it, like I don't see, like, it's fun. It's fun for us. Like I get to be with those guys again. We get to play and we get to like really have a good time,
yeah,
because the energy's there. There have been times though, I'll tell you what, the thing about revisiting Braid for me, or if I had to do the Firebird band again, for example, or something like that, which there's not a demand for, so I'm not going to. But but let's say there was. I kind of have to inhabit a role. Does that make sense?
yeah,
Because
yeah, yeah,
like like as you grow and as you change, you like I am not at all the same person I was when we did Framing Canvas. It doesn't mean I don't want to play the songs or enjoy the music or be part of that. It's just that when I am a part of Braid, I kind of put myself back into that old, like I shoehorn myself back in. Sometimes it feels like you're shoehorning yourself back in. Um,
Yeah.
and it's not negative. It's just a like I know the constraints. I know where my boxes are. I know where the line is. I know where that like I know like if we're gonna do like let's say we were gonna do something new, right? Like what we
Yeah.
did in 2014, we did a new record, which
Yeah.
was No Coast. Um, I know what the lines are. Like there are specific and they're not written. They're not anyone no one is saying like we only do this and we only do that. But there is a definite box, right?
Yeah.
And that box is what we fit inside of. There's room to poke through it in some places with and I don't it's not like I feel constrained. I'm just aware. I'm aware of it.
Yeah.
And so there's a certain um persona almost that I inhabit. Is that weird to say?
No, no,
You
because
know?
you're revisiting a dynamic. Okay, you're
That's
not
right.
becoming who you were then, but you're reinserting yourself into a pre-existing dynamic that is that organism that was and is Braid, right?
And that's why I talk about people mattering with what
Mhm.
the music that you're releasing. Like, and I mean, I think if people didn't matter, you know, like when Braid quit, they just would have replaced me and continued on, right?
Right.
In you know, if we want to be technical on that or talk about that from a feelings perspective, but the truth is, I think that people matter, and so with what you're with when you're playing, right? And so the dynamic, if the dynamic is this, and this is always what the dynamic is, there's room to shift it, but that shift with something like Braid would happen a lot faster if we had been playing together since 1994 and never stopped, right? We
Yeah.
might have way different album now than we did in 1998 or whatever, but because we revisited in chunks, that movement
Yeah.
is slower, right? It's like it's a slowly, you know, warping box. Still a box,
Yeah.
but it's warped a little bit. Maybe a few wrinkles, you know.
But what's interesting about that too is the fact that you guys haven't been constantly and consistently been chiseling away at Braid when you do return to it. Yes, there's a familiarity, but you're bringing with it everything that you'd done between the last time you'd been together and
Yeah,
now,
yeah, yeah.
which is why the last record, although still sounding somewhat like a Braid record, has a lot more. There are far more colors on your palette.
Mm. Hmm.
Okay, so the
Hmm.
finished product is going to have a lot more flavors. There's just more to it. It's a more dense and more cerebral experience, in my opinion. But like you'd said, I've been listening since way back then. So
Yeah,
I have a very specific
like
purview of it, you
yeah,
know?
well, like an idea of what you're gonna get, right?
Yeah.
And yeah, and I think that even that can shape sometimes what someone does, right?
Mhm.
So like one of the reasons that when I started the band Sunset, um, the reason that I started Sunset was because I had talked to Steve Zanaver, who was the guy who started Sunset with me. Like, you know, we were gonna actually do a new Firebird band record, but what I didn't want to do is have expectations.
Yeah.
I didn't want anyone to say, well, this doesn't sound like Sunset or this or sorry, this doesn't sound like the Firebird band or like this isn't what I was expecting or it's too different or whatever. So I was like, well, we just have to start a new band and change the name because I don't really want to play those old songs anymore because that's not where I don't kind of live in that space anymore, you know?
Right.
And so we're starting something fresh. Let's do it fresh. But because what that does is it gets rid of expectations about what someone should expect. Now, does that bring more people along or less people along? In my experience, less people follow you. And it's, I mean, I can either grow as a musician or I can grow my following, right? And
Right.
I think if I had chose to, sometimes I wish I had chosen the latter, right? Like just kept doing what people expected of me, so that I could then grow as a musician with them. Like, just wait 10 years to do it. You know what I mean? Like
Right.
like how Radiohead did, right? Like Radiohead
Mhm.
started with, like just kind of alt rock almost, right? And
Sure.
moved way into art rock. And but that was a progression, right?
Mhm.
And to start to do a progression with changing names and doing different stuff and have there be a quite obvious cut, between what this was and what this is, sometimes you lose people. And that's okay. That's just the way it is.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
not going to stop playing music because of that, like, yeah.
And to be fair, I don't, even though they're much acclaimed and lauded, are there the same amount of people who listen to Pablo Honey who hung on for the Bends and then OK
No, of
Computer?
course not. Right,
No,
right, yeah,
no.
yeah, yeah,
Even though the albums got better,
yeah.
the masses are not always going to be on board for really good music. Just like if you were to take Meet the Beatles and put it next to Revolver,
Mhm, mhm,
or take the first Clash record and put it next to Sandinista.
mhm, mhm.
It's the same thing. It got better, it got more nuanced, it became more artistic, and a lot of record sales got lost along the way.
Of course they did. Yeah,
Yeah,
of course they did.
yeah.
I mean, yeah. But you know what's interesting though? A band like The Cure, right? The
Mhm.
Cure, they did it very well.
Yeah.
I mean, I and now I don't wanna trash talk The Cure, but I have to say one thing. I think after Wish, it just sort of blended into one for me. Like,
It
it was
did,
like, okay, there's
except
like,
for Blood Flowers, yes, I agree.
so I felt like that happened, but now I just saw that Robert Smith said that they're doing 2 records this year,
Mhm.
and I literally just saw, like, an interview somewhere, Enemy or something, and, he was saying that they're doing 2 new records, and I'm really excited to hear them because I'll always love them. But I was gonna say the one thing that they did, at least through, um, Wish, for me, was that they really did, like, if you listen to Boys Don't Cry, you can hear that it's the same band on Wish.
Yep,
Just Wish is production, production, production,
yep,
and also, like, more, it's a little more subdued and not subdued, it's just pop. It just became more pop. And maybe it's because Robert Smith got better at writing pop, right? Or whatever. And Disintegration was the sort of um the his little foray into, like, I'm gonna go weird for a minute. I'm gonna get weird. Guys, I'm about to get weird, y'all. And then he did put
yep.
but he threw Love Song on there, right? But that record's great, right? Also, 17 Seconds, don't love that record. There's a couple of good songs, like A Forest, I think, is on there, and
So
stuff like
good.
that. Such a good song.
But, if you're taking The Cure into consideration, there's basically 2 to 3 Cure iterations
Yeah,
within
vibe.
this,
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
like, within the confines of that band, because you get The Boys Don't Cry, 3 Imaginary Boys,
yeah,
Cure. Then you get
yeah,
the Pornography, Disintegration, Blood Flowers, Cure. Then
yeah.
you get the Kiss Me,
Yes,
Kiss Me, Kiss Me,
and they're spread out
Wish,
over
Cure,
time.
and
Yeah,
a and
yeah,
they existed in chunks
yeah,
almost.
yeah.
You know what I'm saying? But, like, Blood Flowers was just kind of a return to Pornography and Disintegration.
After, yeah, mhm, mhm.
But, I it's a to be a band that existed for as long as they did, they took on a few different personalities that they revisited from time to time.
Yeah, yeah,
And
that's
think
right. That's a
if
good thought, yeah,
I
yeah,
think if you're gonna keep the same name and like, not even a majority, but a couple of the same, members,
yeah,
you're
yeah,
gonna have to approach it as if, okay, we're in this phase again, guys.
That's right. Yeah, this is what I'm feeling. We're gonna revisit this vibe now. Like, right?
Yeah,
I mean, I could almost hear it. Like I could almost hear it in my head if that's what I was thinking. Like, oh, we should do this kind of thing again. I'm feeling this vibe again lately, right? Whatever it is, right?
it's
Yeah.
and like conversely, you take someone like Depeche Mode into consideration.
Mhm.
Depeche Mode went from pure sugary electropop, almost boy band electropop, and then you introduce depression and drugs, and
Yeah,
then
and in industrial music, right? Yeah, too.
you know, Ein Sturzen Nubaten and, you
Yeah,
know, their German influence specifically,
yeah.
you start to get Black Celebration, you start to get Violator
Mhm.
and Music for the Masses before it, at least with them, it's there's a trajectory that maybe ebbs and flows, but they're still kind of the same band.
Yeah,
The
yeah, that's right, they are. Yeah, they really are.
the the
I mean,
Cure,
and
you
it
get
just they just got
phases.
better at it, that's all.
Yeah,
Right? Yeah, yeah.
and all of the Cure's phases with maybe a hiccup or 2, I think,
Mhm.
is all pretty amazing.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, you're right. Yeah, and that's I think that's the thing about, like, that's one band, like The Cure, for example, that was able to kinda stick with it, stay true to what they kinda did, and but just go weird when they want, go
Yeah,
for it. And, not as art weird as, like, um, necessarily what Radiohead did, but at the time, yes, it was,
yeah,
right? At the time, of course it was. It
mhm,
was definitely unique and different and dark and weird and goth,
yeah.
and that was that gothic influence, right? So, yeah, anyway,
But what I
yeah.
want I think with what to kinda wrap up what I was driving at with those 2 examples, even though you're not in the same band and with
Oh, and
at
not
any
even any
stretch,
of the same in any stretch of the imagination in the same kind of
but
like, at the same level, yeah,
no,
yeah,
but you're allowed to move in these phases
of course, you have
like
to,
the Cure did. You
yeah.
you you get to approach these aspirations with the same zeal, and you still get to own it,
Yeah,
especially now after you've faced everything you've faced and seen everything you've seen, and, like, you don't owe anyone anything anymore. Now you in all actuality, you can just do this strictly for you without any apology because in all honesty, who do you owe?
nobody, you're right.
Nobody.
I mean, and the real truth is that, I think that's also why I've just been feeling I mean, look, part of it is I'll be totally honest, I think part of it is gonna be therapeutic,
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot that's been, boiling. It just, it's not like a it's not like a volcano. It's more like, it's just there, just sits there. I can feel it. Like I always when I'm ready to write a record, I feel it. I feel this physical, like it sits in my chest here,
Mhm.
and it's like it's really almost like right in the heart. Like I feel it right now. It's just it's very visceral. It's very like I know I got to get this out of me, you know. And,
Yeah.
and that's I mean, but I think that's what I've always done, right? And I hope that that's what everybody else does because I like the feeling. Uh,
I
yeah.
as a musician, yes, that's always been the same sort of physical, visceral, palpable reaction
Mhm.
to a festering idea. Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
there, and it's there, and it's just sitting there. All you have to do is just lift up the just give like, for me, I just have to give myself the time to open the box,
Mhm.
and,
I
you know.
think that's why I do this now. I mean, the pandemic's the reason why I do a podcast. That and my wife saying you need to do this because you've got a cool voice and you went to school for English and you're
Yeah,
not using your degree, so do
yeah,
it
do
with
it. Yeah,
this. But
yeah,
in all honesty, like I what I'd wanted to do was just sort of scale across a confluence of different artists that I actually appreciated. Like, I'm not pandering to people I don't like at this point. I'm just, I'm too old for that shit. I'm
of course.
going
You're
I'm
doing it for
going
yourself, right? I mean,
I'm
you're doing
doing this for me.
yeah, yeah,
And through that, in a very special way, I'm doing it for these people such as yourself who I really appreciate. So even though I'm not writing an album and not getting that release, I still get a release out of it because I'm still casting some sort of light on this beautiful array of artists that meant something to me throughout the course of my 45 years.
yeah,
And
that's amazing.
like a lot of them have been newer because let's face it, a lot of the people in our age group are probably not operating any longer. But I talked to Duncan Barlow, from Guilt, from Endpoint. I
Yeah,
get
I actually I started trying to look up the podcast, and I almost started. I did start listening to the Duncan Barlow one. I'm like, you know what? I'm not going to listen to this because I don't want to be colored by any. Like that's also something I do when I'm writing records. Like
yeah,
I don't listen to records. I
I
don't
don't
listen to
either.
music at all. I only listen to what I'm doing until I'm done
Yeah.
because I don't want to be influenced. Also, like so, I saw your podcast and we talked about doing it and everything, and
Mhm.
I was like, yeah, let's do it. It sounds interesting, and I didn't listen because I did not want to. I didn't want to spoil the conversation because
Right.
I like having conversations with people. So that's why I actually was like, yeah, let's talk. It sounded like it was going to be a good talk, and actually, it really has been.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
yeah,
I agree. I mean, this has been
yeah.
beneficial for me.
I love
It
sharing ideas and I mean, one of my favorite things in the world to do growing up, like once I started meeting people, in different scenes and a scene was a thing.
yeah.
Going to coffee, going and sitting down and have coffee. People don't do that now.
No, not
And
now.
I miss it. I really miss that. And so, but it's because it's you get to bounce ideas off each other, talk about life, talk
Yep.
about interesting things, right? I want to talk about art and music every day. I want to talk about it with people. I don't get to. Yeah,
Yeah.
but I love it. It's my favorite thing in the world to do outside of making it, So
It's mind-blowing because, like, if I were to collect not only the things I did in fanzines or while I was playing in bands, but just stories of, going and sitting in a Denny's drinking coffee with, an interesting group of people, like, this band, the band that I will mention at the end of this anecdote, happened to be, like, multi-Grammy award-winning platinum-selling artists, but when I'd met them, they were in a really
crappy
fringe
band. Yeah.
really fringe metalcore band in the mid-90s,
Okay.
and I sat down with them, and they were just these, like, really sweet, really interesting, artistic, beautiful people, and I got to really, like, kinda sample who they were as humans and their souls, and I never would have expected that 15 to 16 years later, they would become Fall Out Boy.
Oh yeah.
You
Yeah.
know what I mean? But they were
Cool. Yeah.
they were in Race Trader and Arma Angelus at the time, and, like
I had no idea. I think I must have known, but I just forgot that one of the guys was in Race Trader. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, Joe Troman was in Race
Yeah.
Trader, and the other guys were in Arma Angelus.
Yeah. I didn't know that band, but yeah.
Yeah, they were like a lower tier metalcore band. They were
Okay. Yeah.
cool. They were cool. It
Yeah.
wasn't really my main thing because
Yeah.
if
But
if it was
it
if it
was
was
in the scene that you were involved in.
yeah,
So you went and you hung out, right?
yeah,
And
yeah,
that's like that was the other thing about the scene, about us doing that stuff, right? It was always about just talking, meeting interesting people, doing interesting things. And they weren't always like the people that I became friends with weren't always in the best, coolest bands, right? At the
right.
time, right? I mean, some of them went on to be in great bands and some of them didn't. But didn't color how I felt about them, right?
No.
But the thing about it is though, is that you get to talk about art, you get to talk about music, and that's where you
We
share
bonded over
where you
Neurosis.
exchange ideas. Yeah,
We
yeah,
bonded over like I had a Neurosis Through Silver and Blood t-shirt, and they're
yeah,
like, "Yes, that's my favorite band." I'm like, and Patrick Stump, the singer of Fall Out Boy, is like, "I love them. They're my favorite band." Can you think
yeah,
of that guy listening to Neurosis?
yeah. No, yeah.
None of us
Well, sure.
can, but
I mean, sure, but you know what I
he
mean.
does,
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
but
yeah,
he does. So, like, there's always that seed of reciprocity no matter what you go on to do, and I can't judge them for making the music they make. How
no.
can I? How can I?
Why?
It's
Why
not
would
my
you?
thing, but how
Yeah,
can I?
it's fine. It's
Yeah.
fine. Yeah, it's
I'd
fine.
rather listen to what you're doing, honestly.
Well, I appreciate that. I wish more people felt that way. I wish as many people that felt the same way about Fall Out Boy felt that way about me.
Yeah, but you know what I mean?
I
But
mean,
you're
I mean, I am joking, but
yeah.
also not joking. Yeah,
No, no, but I mean, who
yeah,
wouldn't want that? Who wouldn't
yeah,
want that? But you
yeah.
still get to command your area, and it's yours. It's unequivocally yours. I mean, like, there
Yeah.
are always gonna be those people who are going to listen to whatever you do without prejudice,
Sure.
and that's I don't have that. I've been playing music since 1988.
Hmm.
I don't have that, but you do.
Yeah, I mean, I have to count myself lucky in some of those respects for sure. And
Yeah.
I'll be honest, like the it is crazy to me to think that some of the stuff that I did and that we did, you know, um, whatever 20 something years ago, right? 25 years ago or more is important to people and is still relevant, right? Because to me, um, that's way more than I ever expected, you know,
Yeah,
ever.
but
I
what
expected, yeah,
I'm talking about Sunset 2.5 years ago, 3 years ago. You know, I mean, that was important to me.
yeah. Well, I appreciate it. I mean, it was a that was a difficult record. We wrote that one while I was going through treatment and stuff. Not through cancer treatment, but through uh, what I talked about before with alcoholism.
Right.
And part of that was written then and before and during then. And then we had gotten it ready for release, and I decided I was going to put it out myself. Um, and well, partly because the label that we went with on the first record, um, they had an option, but to do the next one, but we just didn't have nothing against them, or I don't think they have anything against us. We just didn't have an agreement on what we wanted to do for the second record, so I just said,
Mhm.
"Oh, I'll do it." Um, and so, but yeah, we got it ready. We were ready to go. I got diagnosed with cancer, and if you look at those promo photos that we did for that record, because we did the promo photos around May, I think maybe we did it in like April. I think I probably took the photos in April, but it was right after I had like massive surgery to remove a bunch of stuff. And like I had to go in and take the dark circles out of my eyes and stuff because it was so, I mean, it was so obvious that I was like sick at the time.
Yeah.
So those photos are definitely there's a little bit, I mean, it's not crazy doctored. It's just the dark circles are removed because I mean, I was like I had just had major surgery
Yeah.
and it was crazy. It was crazy. So but yeah, we had to get it done because I was like, well, I mean, I got to put this record out. I don't know if I'm going to die. You know, I mean, I'll be frank, you know, that's how I felt. You know, I
Yeah.
got to get this record done. It was being mixed already and it's ready to go. And well, I don't think it was being mixed yet. It was about to be mixed. Um, I had my old friend Chris Common mix it and master it. But yeah, man, I mean, That record was an experiment in and of itself. I didn't want to really sing anymore in the band. Just really wasn't feeling motivated to sing for the second record. Second record is called "It's Hard to Be Loved by You."
Yeah.
And
Which is my favorite of the two, believe it or
oh,
not.
is it really?
Yes.
Yeah, that's
Yes.
great. That's awesome. I mean, that's cool to hear because um, I don't feel like I get that. I feel but also it's different. Again, between the two records, there's always going to be differences between records. If there's not, then why are you doing more records? That's how I feel.
Exactly. Yeah.
But yeah, I had my wife sing on it, and
Hmm.
I actually had started. I was like, I don't. Maybe my wife and I shouldn't be in a band together. That's what I was thinking.
Mm.
And so I had asked her, and she's like, I don't want to do it, I don't think. And I'm like, okay. So I I started looking online. I started posting like, hey, any girls want to sing in a band that that I know, like on Instagram and stuff, like just trying to find people that I know that might want to sing, or someone that somebody knows, right? I
Yeah.
was actually going to start taking out Craigslist ads too, but I was like, I don't want to do that again. So, um, so anyway, so then it was like, I had had a couple people send me some stuff. Like I'd sent some demos to some people for some vocal stuff, and everybody sent me some vocals, and I was like, it was fine. Some of it was fine, some of it was good. But I remember my wife listening to it with me, and she just, my wife isn't shy. She's just like, nah, no, and so finally, so she's like, I'll just do it. I'm like, okay, great, because that's what I wanted in the first place, right?
Yeah.
And so then, so she did. It was really cool. I mean, she would, because I was having a lot of trouble because I had the songs kind of ready for, I think, maybe at least a year. Like some of them were like sitting there in like an almost done state for like a year. And I would just keep adding or doing something to it, or like, oh, like I don't like this electronic part. I'll replace it with a guitar that does something similar. And in this spot, I'll do this. So I really, really let those songs kind of sit with me for a while. I listened to them a lot, a lot. But I listened to them so much that they became almost instrumentals to me. So I just lost the will and the ability to make up a new melody because I was just singing the like synth parts or the guitar parts or whatever. Like I would just sing along when it would come on. Like, yeah, this sounds good. But I'm like, but it's not done because there's no vocal, but I can't think of a melody. So yeah, so I gave it to her, and she'd be like, she'd sit there for 45 minutes and be like, all right, I'm done. Let's go record it. Let's do it. You know what I mean? So then we
Yeah.
just go straight down into the studio at the house here when it was in the basement. And I'd hook it up, record it, and then we were done. We were done in like, 2 hours from like writing the lyrics for one song, like per song, but like write the lyrics, go down, record it, and then like do it again the next day or whenever we felt like we had time. It was fun. It was really fun. And, I mean, eh, she's not shy with what she's singing about, it's really good stuff. Like she was honest with what she was talking about. It's great. It was really good. I said, one of the things I told her, I said, look, I'm not going to ask you if any of these are about me, but like, I don't remember if I said that exactly, but I was kind of like, okay, well, this one's, I know what this is about, right? And so I was like, just don't be shy. Sing exactly what you wrote down. Don't worry about what I think. Just do it for real. Like
Yeah.
it's okay if like I don't care what it is. If it's what you wrote, just sing it. And so she did. And I just took it as like, let's just get the best performance. This sounds great. This is real. And that's the way I felt. That's how that record came out. So yeah, it was fun. It was a fun
That's
record.
incredible story. And, taking into consideration everything that's occurred over all of these many years, especially since, 2020. What do you think is the one thing you truly take away from all of this?
Mm.
All of this experience, all of this separating yourself from, the obsession of addiction to getting kind of to the other side of, you know, uh, facing down mortality and the very all-encompassing and palpable nature of what one could only construe as the Grim Reaper breathing down your neck to right now.
Mm,
What's the one thing you've taken from all of that?
mm. I think I think that I think the thing that keeps coming back in my mind a lot is that life is short, you know. No matter what, no matter whether you're 45, 25, 85, no matter what, it's short. And you gotta be the best person you can be, because you don't get another shot at it. And like the only thing, like if nothing matters, then we're all doomed.
Yeah.
And so it does matter to be here, right? That existential threat of being in the middle of, an empty void that's so big that it's unfathomable, and in just you're unable to wrap your head around it. That stuff doesn't really matter. The truth is that the people that you the things that you do and the people that you affect are what's important, because you're shaping a real future for real people, for real human beings, and other things. And and I think that, if I can give um feeling and emotion and art, and people can enjoy that, and feel something from that, that's just my own way of, you know I mean, if I have to wrap it in a bow, that's my own way of giving, right? But the other side of that is that, not only do I have to have I don't have to have lofty goals. I just have to try, you know?
Yeah.
And I think that's the thing that I've taken away, is that, you know, um, since there is only one chance, like if I'm not gonna try to be a good person or a better person, or try to be the best dad or the best husband, or try to put out music that I like, or try to enjoy my life, or try to do the things that I want to do. If you don't try, you never will do anything, you know,
Yeah.
and nothing good will come, right? So if I know that something is not right, then I can fix it. And I think that's something that I didn't know before. I didn't know that I could fix it. And sometimes you can't fix it. There aren't things that you can fix, but there are just it's just a different way of looking at things. Like nothing is in I think the truth is nothing is insurmountable. Nothing. It can't be. It can't be that there's anything that's insurmountable, because then we just all have to give up. I don't want to give up.
I I have to tell you, that's that's beautiful. I
I
I
appreciate it. Yeah.
I don't think that there's any better way to leave this than that. That is the most perfect bow we could put on this.
Yeah. Well, I feel that way.
That's that's gorgeous. That is gorgeous. I gotta ask you, would you come on again when you have an album ready to go?
Absolutely. Yeah. This has been a really good time.
This has
Been
been
a good conversation.
an honor and a privilege and a pleasure
Thanks, Peter. You
coming
too.
right from here. I really appreciate you coming on.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it too much. Thanks, dude.
All right, brother. I hope you have a great night and go enjoy your family.
You too.
All
Happy
right.
Friday. Hope you get to do some enjoyable things this weekend, man.
You as well.
All right. Peace.
Keep in touch, all right?
You too, Peter.
All right,
Bye.
brother. Bye.
That was my highly emotional and incredible conversation with Chris Broach. As you heard, Chris and I have an awful lot in common. And for as much as we have in common, I haven't experienced quite what he has. You know, I have to say there really is something special going on here with these episodes, with these conversations I've been having with people. I tend to get put in the right place at the right time with the right people. You hear the phrase thrown around quite a bit that hurt people hurt people. But I think just as often, hurt people benefit other hurt people. My wife likes to call me the punk rock Oprah Winfrey. And I don't know how true that is, but there is an awful lot of emotion flying around on this podcast. And I really wouldn't have it any other way. I would rather have just a handful of really tear-filled and emotional conversations than 1 million conversations with very famous, very boring, trite musicians, artists, authors, actors. As you heard, Chris will be back for a part 2 at some point, and I couldn't be happier. So listen, everybody. I hope you're out there taking care of yourselves, taking care of each other. He's been Chris. I've been Peter. You've been beautiful. From 3:33 a.m. Studios, this has been the Book of Very, Very Bad Things podcast.
Don't shake the house. Just listen to the rain.